Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah share. We're holding Mishnah Berurah Chelik Beis, and in Mitzvah Hashem today we will be learning Daf Pei Aleph Amud Aleph. We're embarking on a very interesting topic, the topic of Shinui Makam, which we began yesterday with the Mishnah Berurah's beautiful Hakdama to Siman Kofayin Ches. Today we're going to start Siman Kofayin Ches proper with the words on the Mechaber and Sif Aleph on Pei Amid Beis. The Siman starts on Pei Amid Beis. We're going to be learning Pei Aleph Amid Aleph. Before we begin our learning today, we should remember our learning should be a schus for Achenu Kol Beis Yisrael, Hanusunu Batzaru Bashivya, Ha'imdim Bein Bayamu Bein Bayabasha Amakim, Yerachem Aleihem, V'yaitziem Yitzarlu L'Rvacha Me'afelu L'Oira Mishibu L'Gu'ula, Hashta Bagolo V'Zman Kariv and Amar Amen. Our learning should be a schus refuah shalema for our real Yosef ben Miriam Yezel and Meir ben Chayesara. They should have a refuah shalema b'seich shar Chayla Yisrael. So, without further ado, Siman Kofayin Ches, Pei Amid Beis. Ezed Dvarim Kruyim Hefsik Besuda. What constitutes a hefsik, an interruption in the Suda, which can require you to make a new bracha Rishayna? It may even require you to immediately bench on or make a bracha Achroina on whatever you have previously eaten. So, says the Mechaber Sif Aleph. Now, one word of caution. We went through the very lengthy Hakdama of the Chavetz Chaim yesterday, and we saw that there are several significant, very significant machlokesin when the halachas of Shinui Makam apply, when the halachas of Shinui Makam do not apply, and what you have to do when you make a Shinui Makam. Now, by the nature of what we do here in this Mishnah Berurah share, we're basically trying to do a page a day. So let's remember that we're only seeing the information one page at a time. So do not walk away from today's share with halacha lamaisa in mind, because we're going to see today halachas that the Mechaber wrote, largely based on shittas that we do not paskin like. So we have to wait for the halacha lamaisa to develop. We got to work our way through the Mechaber, see the Mishnah Berurah on the Mechaber, then ultimately we're going to need to see the Ramah, and we're going to need to see the Mishnah Berurah on the Ramah. So let's be patient before we make halacha lamaisa decisions. Says the Mechaber Sif Aleph. Hayaychel b'bayezeh, if you're eating in one house, upasak seudasai, and now you interrupt your suda, v'halach l'bayez acher, and you leave your house and you go to another house. Now, right away, we saw yesterday in the Chavetz Chaim's Hakdama, certainly, if you leave your house and you go to another house, that certainly constitutes a Shinui Makam. So that's case number one here in the Mechaber. You actually left your house and went to a bayis acher. Or, second case, Shahaya Oichel, you're sitting down and you're eating, you get a knock on the door, and your child comes in and says, Tati, there's somebody outside who wants to talk to you. So you're oichel, you're eating, and now somebody called you out of your house to go speak to him. So you went out of your house. The words pesach over here means that you actually walked out of the house. Not that you went to the door, opened the door, and remained inside. No, you went outside. So you went outside, lepesach beisai, v'chazar, and now you came back. And you want to go back to your dining room table and you want to continue your suda. Says the Mechaber, Hoyel v'shina mekaimai, since in both of these cases, you made a significant shinui makam. In case number one, you actually left your house and went to a different house. In case number two, you walked out your front door, so you left your house, and now you want to come back and continue in the same place that you were. You started your suda at the dining room table, you want to continue eating at your dining room table, but you left. You went out and you came back. So, Hayil Vishina Mekaimai, says the Mechaber, since in both of these cases, you made a significant Shinui Makam, Tzarech levarech lemafreya al masha ochal. The Rambam paskins, the Mechaber paskins like the Shitas HaRambam, that we learned about yesterday in the Chavetz Chaim's Hakdama, which is when you make a shinui makam, you interrupted your Suda, you made a hefsek, you need to bench. You need to make a bracha achrona now on everything that you ate up until now. It's not enough just to make a new bracha rishona on what you're going to eat in the future, and then bench, and you want to pater the new eating that you did and the old eating. You want to pater them both with one bracha achrona. The Rambam holds you can't do that. You made a hamoitzi, you ate. Now you made a shinui makam, you went somewhere else. That original hamoitzi is gone. That original eating is done with. You need to close it out with a bracha achrona. The bracha achrona that you're going to make later doesn't go on this. So the mechaber, paskening like the Rambam says, tzarich levarich lemafreya al ma she'achal. You need to make a bracha achrona on what you ate until now. And if you want to continue eating, the chayzer mevarich betchila hamoitzi, you need to make a new bracha of hamoitzi lechem in haaretz. V'achakach yigmar suudasai. And then you could go ahead and you could finish your suda. So, again, what are the two cases of the mechaber, and how is he paskening? Case number one, and we're going to put this in the context of a suda that you were kaveya al hapas, where you washed the tilas yadayim and you made hamoitzi on lechem. So, you went to eat supper, you washed the tilas yadayim, you made a hamoitzi, you're sitting by your dining room table, and you're enjoying your meal. And now, for some reason, you decided to go next door to your neighbor. So you didn't bench, you didn't anything, you got up, you walked out your front door, you went to your neighbor's house. Now your neighbor offers you something to eat. You're thinking to yourself, well, I'm in the middle of supper. I made a hamoitzi. He's offering me something to eat. I could eat. No, you can't eat. If you want to eat by your neighbor, you need to make a bracha rishona. It doesn't matter what kind of food he offers you. Whatever food he offers you, whether it's dvar maboy machmas asuda, he offers you a nice piece of meat, you got to make a shakal. The brachas that you made by your dining room table are no longer negeya because you made a shinui makam and you went to somebody else's house. When you go back to your house, you can't continue your supper. The mechaber says, what do you have to do? The first thing you have to do is bench. Really, we're going to see in the Mishnah Berurah, you should have benched before you got up to go to the neighbor. Lichatchila, if you knew you were leaving, you had to bench. You didn't bench. So b'diavad, if you didn't bench, when you come back to your house, the first thing you need to do is bench. Then you want to continue your suda, you need to make a new hamoitzi. You want to eat bread, you got to make a new hamoitzi. You don't want to eat bread, you want to eat steak, you got to make a new shahakal. Mishnah Berurah, the Bir Alaka, points out that if you were gone for a long time and you were mesiach das al shmiras yadayim, you have to wash a new tilas yadayim. So in essence, the mechaber is telling you, when you got up and you walked out the door, your suda ended. Your suda ended. It's all done. You need to make a bracha achrona, and you need to make a new bracha rishona. Aval, however, continues the mechaber near the end of the line, top line, pei aleph amid aleph. Aval, however, im diber yimoi b'say chabayis, if somebody knocked on the door to speak to you and you never stepped out of the house, you spoke to him in the house, even though we're in the world of the mechaber right now, we're going to imagine that the front door of your house is in your dining room. So there's no question here of mecheder lecheder. You got up from the dining room table, you walked over to the door, you opened to the door, you spoke to your neighbor while you stayed in your house. So even though you went from one side of the dining room to the other side of the dining room, einoy tzarich levarich. That does not constitute a shinui makam. That's mizavis lezavis. That's from one end of the room to the other end of the room. That does not constitute a shinui makam, and therefore says the mechaber, if you did that, you're okay. Let's pause here, and let's go back to Pei Amid Beis, and let's take a look at the Mishnah Berurah. Mishnah Berurah, Ois Cotton Aleph. So the first thing that the Chavetz Chaim points out is that we have to make one assumption about the cases that the mechaber is giving us in order for the halacha that the mechaber says to be true. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Ois Cotton Aleph, Umayri, we're talking about a case ba'oichel yechidi, when you're eating alone. You're the only one that's eating now. Di'im achal b'yachad im oid anoshim, because if you're sitting around the table together with other people when this happens. So when you got up to go to somebody else's house, or when you got up to go to the front door and talk to somebody outside the door, you left other people at the table. So the emakal biyachad emoid anoshim v'nisharu b'nei chaburasoi b'mukaiman, and you left the people that you were eating with around the table. Ein tzarich lachzor levarich l'kuli alma al yidei yitziyasei. Then your shinui makom is not going to require you to make a new bracha. And he says this is l'kulei alma. Everybody would agree that the fact that you made a shinui makom is not going to require you now to go make a new bracha, like we're going to see in Sif Beis, where we're going to see the halacha that if you leave other people by the table and you go and you make a shinui makom, those people around the table anchor you to the meal. So even though you made a shinui makom, it doesn't constitute a hefsek because they're anchoring you to the makom harishon. They're anchoring you to the original place of the Suda. Mishnah Berurah is cotton bays. The Machaber said, what did you do? You got up and you went to somebody else's house. V'holach, says the Mishnah Berurah, you went to somebody else's house, doesn't matter how long you were there. V'afilu lo nishtar sham klal, even if you didn't stay by the neighbor long at all. Shetekef chazar l'mekayim harishon. Let's say you went to the neighbor to borrow some salt for your steak. So you got up, you left the table, you left the house, you went to the neighbor, knocked on the door, can I borrow your salt shaker? He handed you a salt shaker, you came right back. So the hefsek that we're talking about over here has nothing to do with zman. It has nothing to do with the length of the separation of the delay. It has to do with shinui makom. You went to a different place. So afilu lo nishtar sham klal shetekef chazar l'mekayim harishon. Afilu haki still in all shinui makom mikri. It's called the shinui makom ukid l'kabei, like we're going to see later. V'cholshkeit im ratza ligmar sudasim b'makom hasheni. Certainly, if you went to the neighbor and now you want to sit down and eat by the neighbor, you can't do that. You need a new bracha rishona, and you're going to need a bracha achrona back home at what you ate at home. Ice cut and gimel. The first case of the Machaber was that you left your house and you went l'bayis acher. You went to a different house. Says the Mishnah Berurah, let's remember that yesterday in the Hakdama, we saw that the Chavetz Chaim wrote, even going from one room in your house to another room in your house constitutes a shinui makom, unless you had das when you set out at the beginning of your meal. When you made a bracha at the beginning of your meal, you had das that you're going to walk around the house and you're going to go mecheder lecheder. But if you didn't have das, if you just sat down to start a Suda, then the Mechaber says, going mecheder lecheder constitutes a hefsek. And the Chavetz Chaim agrees with that. The Chavetz Chaim agrees that going mecheder lecheder without previous das constitutes a shinui makom. I brought down to you from the Dirshu footnotes, Heintika Paiskim say that in our reality and in our houses, we consider it to be stam das, that you're going to walk around the house, and we seem to paskin that mecheder lecheder, even without das, does not constitute a problematic shinui makom. But the Mishnah Berurah over here in Ois Kat and Gimel is pointing out to you that when the Mechaber tells you that labayis constitutes a shinui makom, he's reminding you that mecheder lecheder also constitutes a problematic shinui makom unless you had das. We don't paskin that way, but that's the shita of the Mishnah Berurah here. So adin lecheder acher gan ke beklal shinui makom im lo yishaydaite betchila l'shanis lecheder acher ukid lekabei b'hagot ayin sham. Now ois kat and dalit. The second case of the Mechaber was that you were eating, and then somebody called you out to talk to you. Knock on the door, and you stepped outside to talk to somebody. Ois kat and dalit oisha hay oichel ashmeinon bazeh. What the Mechaber is teaching me with this second case is, in this case, you didn't really interrupt your Suda. In the first case, you mamish interrupted your Suda. You interrupted your Suda to go somewhere else. You decided you want to go to your friend's house. So you interrupted your Suda to go to your friend's house. In the second case, you didn't interrupt your Suda for anything. Somebody came, but by the door, he wants to talk to you for a minute. So you got up from the table for a minute, you stepped outside to talk to the guy. But the Yatzal Krasei Pesach Beisei V'Chazar, but you went outside the door of your house and you came back, having Kamay Shinui Mi Bayis L'Bayis. In the world of the Mechaber, that's like going to a different house. Ice cut and hay. The words of the Mechaber were, you went Lip Pesach Beisei, to the door of your house. Says the Mishnah Berurah, what that means is, what the Mechaber wants to say is, Sheyatza Chutz Lepischai. You stepped out your door. You didn't just go to your door, you stepped out of your door. Because if you're schmoozing with your friend and you're standing at the door, so you're inside and you're talking to your friend inside, that would not constitute a shina makom. The Mechaber paskin that in both of these cases, tzarich levarich, and in the words of the Mechaber, first tzarich levarich lemafreya al masha achal. The very first thing you got to do is you're going to have to make a bracha achroina on whatever you ate until now, before you made the shina makom. Says the Mishnah Berurah's Cotton Vav, near the bottom of Peyam and Beis, tzarich levarich. Why? Because by virtue of the fact that you left the place where you started your Suda, chashiv kinifsika suudasai legamri. It's considered that you ended your Suda. When you got up and you walked away, you ended your Suda. Umasha oichal achakach, and whatever you want to eat, mikanu lahaba kisuda acheres damya. That's a new Suda. You left, you went out the door, you schmoozed with somebody, you came back, you're starting a new Suda now. V'lachein, and therefore, according to the Mechaber, the first thing you need to do is mevarich berkas hamazon l'mafreya. You have to make a nach bracha. You have to bench on what you ate until now. V'hamoitzi al lahaba, and you need a new berkas hamoitzi on what you're going to eat mikanu lahaba. If you want to eat more bread, you need a new hamoitzi. Ice cut and zayin, you have to make a bracha achroina l'mafreya. Right? That's what it means when the Mechaber wrote tzarich l'rarich l'mafreya. It means you need to eat on going back. On whatever you ate until now, you need to make berkas hamazon. And says the Chavetz Chaim, in Ois Katan Zayin on Pei Aleph Amud Aleph, uvim kaimai harishain. If we're talking about a Suda al Pas, on Lechem, where you made hamoitzi, you got a bench in your mekaimai harishain. You need to bench in the place where you began the original meal. That's where you need to bench. Ulechatchila, and now the Mishnah Berurah points out, this is all b'di'evet. This that the Mechaber is saying, that you made a shinui makom, when you come back, you need to bench, that's b'di'evet. Ulechatchila, kisheroitza lotzeis b'mekaimai, when you made the decision to get up and go out the door of your house, tzarich levarich berkas habazi kaidim sheyakar, you had to bench then. Really, you were supposed to bench when you made the decision to make the shina makom. You decided to go to the neighbor to get salt, you got to bench. You want to go talk to somebody outside, you got to bench. But you didn't. If you didn't, v'rak b'di'evet, kishaloi birich b'tchila, if you didn't make berkas hamazon when you were supposed to, instead you got up and you made the shina makom, so then when you come back right away, you got to bench in your original place right when you come back, and then you can make a new hamaitzi and continue eating where you want to continue eating. Obviously, if the Mechaber is telling you need to make a new hamaitzi, that means that we're dealing with a suda on bread. Certainly, if you apply the Mechaber's cases to a case where you didn't wash and you're not eating lechem, all you're doing is eating and drinking shahakals or something like that. So we saw yesterday in the Mechaber, then it's much easier to make a shinui makom. We learned the svara yesterday, right? There's the shita of Rav Sheshes. I always mix up Rav Sheshes. No, there's the shita of Rav Chisda. The shita of Rav Chisda is that these halachas of shinui makom only apply to shahakals or bar preaitzes, etc., where there's no halacha requiring you to make a bracha achrona in the place where you first started eating them. So over there's no anchor. There's no bracha achrona anchoring you to the original makom. But by pas, or by something that needs bracha achas me'ein shalosh, You have an anchor. So it's much harder to make a Shida Makam. So what the Mishnah Berurah is saying over here is, the Mechaber told you have to make a new Hamaitzi. That's if you're making a Sud ala Pas. Kol Shkein, if you're not talking about Pas, if you're talking about Peiros, or you're talking about coffee, so over there it's much easier to make a Shida Makam because you have no anchor of the bracha achrayna. Certainly you need a new bracha. So v'choshkin im lo yacham etchila rak peres hamashkin bevadai shaykh bu Shida Makam ukid lekamei b'sif beis. Ois cut and test. The Mechaber said, but if you never stepped out of your door, if your front door is in your dining room, and you got up from your chair and you walked to the other end of the room and you schmoozed with your friend inside your house on the other side of the room. So then the Mechaber said, if you moved mipina lepina, if you went from one end of the room to the other end of the room, that does not constitute a Shida Makam. mipina lepina, hainu ba'isa cheder. If you go from one side of the room to the other side of the room in the same room, that's not a Shida Makam. And this is true even if when you go to the other side of the room, you cannot see your original spot. Why can't you see it? Machmas hefsik davar mitashmisha abayis, kamay tanur, like an oven, a paravan, or a mechitza of some kind. V'kiyotza bazeh. In other words, let's say you have a dining room that's 20 feet long. The dining room table is on one end, and you sit at the head of the table, and the front door is 20 feet away on the other end. And between your seat at the dining room table and the front door, you have one of these folding partitions. So when you stand at the front door, you cannot see your seat at the dining room table. So you got up from your seat at the dining room table, you went to the front door, so you went from one end of the room to the other end of the same room. But you could no longer see the Mekayim Arishain. You could no longer see your seat at the dining room table from the front door. Says the Mishnah Berurah, that's not a problem. That does not constitute a Shida Makam, since Lamaisa, you are still in one room. Okay, now let's go to the words of the Ramah, second line down, Pei Aleph Amud Aleph, near the end of the line. Hagah, says the Ramah, V'ayin l'kamon Siman Reisha and Gimel. Take a look later on in Siman Reisha and Gimel. Im hayadaito lecha b'makam acher. If you had das to eat in another place, loy mikri Shida Makam. That's not called a Shida Makam. For who? But that's only true. Sheyu shnei mekayimos b'bayis echad. If both of the places are in one house. V'ayin l'kamon Siman Kuf Pei Daled. And take a look later in Siman Kuf Pei Daled. Okay, Ois Kotnet Yud in the Mishnah Berurah. What Ramah is telling you when he tells you to look later on in Siman Reisha and Gimel is the Sham Mayril Inyan Shini Mokim Gabi Kiddush. Reisha and Gimel, which is in Hilchah Shabbos, which you get there in not too long from now, Be'ezras Hashem Yisbarach. In Siman Reisha and Gimel, this topic of Shida Makam comes up in the context of the halachas of Kiddush. But the same rules that applied to Shida Makam by Kiddush apply to Shida Makam over here by brachas. Ois cut Yud Aleph. The Ramah is telling you, if you had das, what does that mean you had das? Says the Mishnah Berurah, Shebishas bracha, when you made your original bracha, chashav lechel gam b'makom hahu, you had in mind that you're going to eat over there also, and I believe there is a Dirshu footnote over here that points out, yes, Dirshu footnote number 8 points out from Reb Nissen Karelitz and from Reb Chaim Kanievsky, Zechet Tzadik Levracha, that the wording of the Mishnah Berurah over here is a bit imprecise. The Mishnah Berurah says, Shebishas bracha chashav lechol gam b'makom. If you had das that you were going to eat in that other place as well. Says Reb Chaim Kanievsky, Reb Nissen Karelitz, the Chavetz Chaim does not mean that when you made the original bracha, you had das that you're going to eat in the other place as well. Even if you just had das that you're going to go there. So again, we're talking about the world of the Mishnah Berurah, of the Mechaber, the Ramah, and the Mishnah Berurah, where they recognize as a shinoi makom from one room in the house to another room in the house as a shinoi makom. I keep on telling you, we know from the Heintek Paiskim, we don't consider going from one room in the house to another room in the house to be a shinoi makom. We paskin, you don't even need das. You don't need das. In our reality, you don't need to have das when you make your hamoitzi that I might go upstairs to the bedroom to get something. Our stam das is that in the middle of the Suda you might walk all over the house. And therefore we paskin that mecheder lecheder in one bias does not constitute a problematic shinoi makom, even if you didn't have das. But the Ramah is requiring das. So what this Ramah is doing is, the Mechaber just came and he told you two cases of significant shinoi makom. One case is you left your house and you went to your neighbor's house. The other case is you walked out your front door to talk to your friend. Right? Says the Ramah that going mecheder lecheder could also be a problematic shinoi makom, but not if you had das. So let's again, I want to be very precise about this. Let's look at the words of the Ramah again, near the end of the second line. V'ayin lekaman siman reisha and gimel im hayadaita lecha b'makam acher. If, like the Mishnah Berurah explains, if when you made your original bracha, if when you made your hamoitzi, you had das to go someplace else, loy mikri shinoi makom, that's not called a shinoi makom. But that's not true if you went to your neighbor's house. If you had das when you made your hamoitzi that I might go to my neighbor, that das doesn't help you. Going to your neighbor's house, zazah shinoi makom, das doesn't help. If you had das that I might step outside to talk to somebody when you made the hamoitzi, that das doesn't help you. It's still a shinoi makom. When does it help you? Continues the Ramah, v'hu sheyu shtei hamakomis b'bayis echad. When does das help? When you go mecheder lecheder in one house. That's when das helps. On that, the Mishnah Berurah is saying, in Ois Katan Yud Aleph, you had das when you made the original bracha that you're going to eat somewhere else also, in the other room. Says Reb Nissim Karel, that it doesn't mean that you have to have das that you're going to eat in the bedroom. It doesn't mean that you have to have das that I'm going to eat in the living room. As long as you had das that I'm going to walk around, that I'm going to go mecheder lecheder, that das would protect you against having a problematic shinoi makom mecheder lecheder in one house. Aiskan Yud Beis b'bayis echad. What constitutes one house? Hainu takas gag echad. It means as long as you're under one roof. Va'afilu mecheder lecheder, even from one room to the other. Oimi bayis la'aliyah, or from the first floor to the second floor, or to the fourth floor. As long as you're under one roof, it's all called mecheder lecheder. And in the world of the Ramah, das would protect you against a problematic shinoi makom. In our reality, you could walk all over the house even without das, and it's not considered a problematic shinoi makom. And this is true even though when you're on the fourth floor, you can't see your seat at the dining room table on the bottom floor. This v'hu is a little bit funny. What the Mishnah Berurah seems to be saying is, we're talking about the ability to see your original place. V'hu if you're going from one end of the room to the other, and you could see your original place, then afilu derech haloin, even if you're only seeing it through a window, va'afilu miktsas b'koimei, and even if you can only see part of the table, nami moyel af shelo yahayadaita mitchila. In other words, what the Mishnah Berurah is saying, again, in the world of the Mechaber, the Ramah, and the Mishnah Berurah, where mecheder lecheder could be a problematic shinoi makom, says the Mishnah Berurah, if you could somehow see your original place at the table from where you went mecheder lecheder, so then, like, let's say you have a loft. Let's say you have one of these house setups where there's the dining room downstairs on a big open floor plan, and then you can go upstairs, a staircase, you can go to the second floor, and there's like a loft overlooking the dining room. So you're definitely in a different room. That room has a different purpose, everything else. Maybe it's even a bedroom, and there's a window overlooking the dining room downstairs. You could still see the dining room table. That even if you didn't have das, even though you went from one cheder to another cheder, it's not a problematic shinoi makom. Why? Because you could see your original place. But this is only true when we're dealing with a shinui makom mecheder lecheder in one house. Aval mibayis labayis. But from your house to your neighbor's house, even if they're very close to each other. So your house is here, and your neighbor's house is 10 feet away, and your dining room window opens up onto his dining room window. So you leave your house, you go into his house, you sit down in his dining room, you could look out of his window into your window, and you could see your dining room table. Over there, the Achrayim don't want to use Re'iyas Makom. V'da. And you should know, based on what we're going to see, this is now the what's the word I'm looking for? Not the caution, the disclaimer. Now the Mishnah Berurah is giving you the disclaimer that I gave at the beginning of this year. Says the Mishnah Berurah, V'da, you should know. Based on what we're going to see tomorrow, B'yetz Hashem, in the words of the Ramah in Sif Beis, that we paskin like those paskin, shaloi levarech ayidei shinui makom kishaomed be'emsa sudas pas. We paskin like Reb Chisda. We paskin like Reb Chisda, who says that if you're in the middle of a suda on pas, if you made a hamaitzi, then the fact that you need to come back to your dining room table ultimately in order to bench, because you need to bench where you originally made your hamaitzi, that serves as an anchor that anchors you to your dining room table, and there's no shinui makom. Even the fact that you went to your neighbor's house, not shinui makom. Why? Because you're anchored to your dining room table. So says the Mishnah Berurah, we're going to see the Haggadah tomorrow. The anu noegin kapaiskim shalol levarcha yidei shinui makom kishaybed b'emtzis pas suei nafkamina ladina kol achilukam ha'elu she'ezkarnu l'inyan shinui makom. This whole raid that we're talking about of shinui makom is not so negeya. Rak l'inyan mesubed lechel peroy su sha'ari mashkin. It's only negeya if you made a boy pre-eitz on an apple, you made a shakel on a coffee. The behem l'kuliyam shak din shinui makom, because even Rav Chisda agrees that the halachas of shinui makom apply to shakel and boy pre-eitz, but it doesn't apply to hamaitzi. So again, he's giving you a disclaimer that we're getting all intense about what the halach of shinui makom is by a suda ala pas. We're going to pass like Rav Chisda. It's not going to be negated to us. Okay, I'm going to break over here, and Mir Tzadshem will continue next time with Sif Beis. Thank you so much for joining me for limud HaTorah. The source of limud HaTorah should be begging against Klal Yisrael. The Rebbeinu Shalom should send Yeshuas, Refuas, Parnaset, Shidduchim to all those in need. We should be zeicher to see the Geula Shlema with the Bias Goel Tzedek b'Meherav Yameinu. Amen. Be well.